we are, we three queens. I'm Achieng.
And I'm Musonda.
I'm Micheline.
And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about something that's really deep. We're going to be talking about failure. Mm-hmm. Because all of us in life at some point have gone through failure, whether it's on a personal front or on a work front. We go through situations that we consider to be failures or a failed situation. And we wanted to talk about how we deal with that. You know, what are some of those circumstances or situations, and how do we actually deal?
You know, in my work as a business coach, we have something that we say, which is that failure is, if intentional, well-meaning, it can't be failure, really. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a new service or a new product and you tried and it hasn't worked, you just try something else, right? It's almost like you've just been given information.
And it's a moment of learning.
Another direction, and it's learning, right? Exactly. So I think about it like that, but of course that is, easy to say, but I just wanted to touch on it from a business point of view, and a lot of innovations have come out of this, and I'm going to say failure. It is trial and error and learning, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's one way I look at it. But I also think about being, now in my 40s, then in my 30s. Yeah. And I was in Brazil, oscillating between different countries there, but also, coming to Kenya or Uganda even for holidays. Yeah. And culturally, by 33, there's certain things that have to be ticked off, right? And so I always got this reactions from people like, oh my God, look at you out in the world, you have this job that seems to be going brilliantly, but what are you doing wrong? How come you're not married?
Exactly. Yes. That's just,
I certainly don't feel bad about myself now when people say that, because I'm like, oh, do you know the life that I'm having? You know what I mean? Yeah. It can't be binary that, you're married equals happy and you're not married as a woman equals unhappy at all. But I have to say that time after time, it touched the depths, of my being. Because then I was like, huh? And African aunties can also just be like, hey, what are you doing wrong? Maybe
they're the worst.
Bambi.
No, really.
In Uganda, you say Bambi. Bambi is like a nice expression of pity. But maybe you're too much of a strong woman. Or maybe you should stop, and all those stop doing this, and this.
Yeah.
All of those were essentially, stop being yourself. And I'm thinking, so somebody's going to find me when I'm not myself.
Right.
Mild, meek, do this. And then I'm going to bust out on day 39 of this marriage, and they'll be like, who have I married? I mean, sorry, I don't typically swear.
Isn't that unfortunate?
But it really riles me up, right?
But isn't that unfortunate?
So that feeling of failure as, women, late 20s into 30s, particularly African women, Latina women, I failed because I haven't gotten married, is something that I have to say, really kind of touched me as a liberal thinker, radical thinker. I was even annoyed that it touched me,
But because you're human.
Yeah.
So deep down it touches a bone.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that's normal. I mean, for me, as you can imagine, growing up in a rural town and then sort of going to university, obviously the expectation was, if you remember, we talked about this a while ago, how, in African society, you're either a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, right? And for me, of course, I picked the doctor bracket, and I remember going to University of Zambia, and I was like, my goodness, I really don't want to be a doctor. And I can't stand blood, the smell of hospitals, and why am I going there? So in the middle of all of that, and I changed my course, and what excited me and interested me was, conservation biology, chemistry, and education, because I really wanted to do that. But as you can imagine, I didn't tell my parents for a good year.
Oh my goodness.
So did they force you to apply to med school? Did you apply?
I applied.
Yes.
I'd gone, and
because
then,
obviously they must have been saying, oh, you'll be a doctor, good girl, good girl,
And so, I remember going to all these family gatherings, and like, Dr. Mumba, you're going to... And I'd be like, no, actually I changed. Yes. I'm doing education, I'm going to be a teacher. And you can see the drooping faces, like, oh, what does that even, what does that mean? So for the longest, I was like, what am I doing? am I going the right way? Oh, I've failed everyone. I really should be in a white, lab coat with a stethoscope around my neck and, the pride and joy of my community. But the irony of it is, and then, with hindsight, you just think, my goodness, what was that moment? But you just feel so pressured. And now, everybody asking me, oh my God, how do I become an environmentalist? I'm like, whoa.
Exactly.
Okay. The world has changed. Things have changed.
Amazing.
But a question to you guys, how did you deal with getting past the emotion? Because sometimes it can break you or shake you and really dent one's confidence. And those were at times when you were, for all intents and purposes.
Oh, your self-esteem is crashed, girl.
So
your self-esteem is crashed.
Like, how did you overcome that?
How do you overcome that? Well, I'll go for it. For me, a couple of things. One is really thinking again about the African context. A lot of parents, aunties will say, my daughter, when are you getting married? And my parents just didn't. Of course, they wonder once in a while, but it was never a constant conversation. And I have lots of friends and cousins who almost dread, especially as we live internationally, they dread going home for the holidays or for whatever because they know that they'll be asked. So I didn't have pressure coming from them. So for the outside community, the other thing I'd say is, thankfully, there's so many women in this position who I just would look and think, why is it that they're glowing? They look like they're having the times of their lives. So it can't be a failure, surely. So I also had that. And then a third thing I'd say is, where are the relationships? People never talk about, are you in a great relationship with yourself, with loved ones, and perhaps even say, do you have a boyfriend? People never really cared for that. Well, I found that, all my sort of exes, my boyfriend, are lovely. They were lovely. We just never sort of was the timing, or we just never got into marriage. But I thought, well, that surely counts for something.
Absolutely.
So it's those categories of thoughts that would come to my mind to know that this cannot be a failure. And if I had one final other, it would be that as I sort of bonded in the Latin American community, and as I came back here to East Africa, some of the stories that I'm hearing about unsuccessful marriages or people unhappy, that for me was the final tick as to, hey, so the other side, the other side surely is not failure. A marriage itself can be a failure because you were in a hurry, or you found the wrong person,
or you went in for the wrong reasons.
So that's it's a lot like self-psychology and thinking through these things.
Absolutely, and it's important. I think that whole self-awareness and going through that process of introspection and reflection was a big part of helping you not stay injured by those things.
Exactly.
What about you, Mus?
I mean, for me, it's the esteem question that you asked in terms of. I mean, I was very fortunate and very lucky that I had professors who just encouraged me because when I transitioned and changed courses and of course I was feeling really beat, like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Biology, gosh, education, gosh, what is the definition of success for this? And one particular professor, Professor Harry Chibwela, I mean, beautiful human. He would be like, Musonda, think about it. There's so few women who work in conservation. How many do you know? And at that moment, actually, I knew maybe one Zambian woman who was working in conservation. And think about it. How many are teaching these kind of subject matters and inspiring young women and men to do that? And then who take us to the field, and then I'll see all this wildlife. And
it's amazing, Musonda, because exposure. We come back to this often, having role models, expanding one's vistas. I think about mentoring young girls and boys, right?
But did you also feel like there was a lot of pressure for you to kind of always succeed? And
a lot. A lot of the situations in my career, I've tended to be either the only female or one of very few females in certain contexts. So already there's some kind of pressure to excel. And there's you're very hard on yourself. I certainly found myself very hard on myself if I made a mistake. If I was swamped with work and I went into a meeting not as prepared as I should, I just was
beat up
I
on
was
yourself.
so hard on myself over it because
Not helpful, is it?
I've let myself down. I've let all these women down. I'm the only woman, or we're such few women. It means that people will stereotype and say, these women can't even.
So you're holding the responsibility for millions and millions.
Actually, to your mind, you feel like seriously, you cannot slip.
Yes.
And so we put ourselves under a lot of pressure. I know that there have been many, many instances where, over the years where I've done that.
Yeah.
Now I'm much more gentle on myself because I'm older, I'm wiser.
Yeah.
And, I don't make apologies for being human. We're human. And
Exactly.
so we'll do our best, but sometimes we'll just be human. And
Exactly.
you can make a mistake and mistakes happen.
Totally.
It's all about the learning.
It really is.
And I like the example you gave around those, those case studies or situations where it didn't fail. It just means you learned something. You learned what to do differently.
Honestly, a
or
lot
not
of innovation comes out of it. These wonderful entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs that I work with. I mean, we sit down and we think, it was just sometimes an oops.
Yeah.
Or, or you let somebody do an oops, and out of that, something really kind of wild and wonderful might be born.
Exactly.
So honestly, I'm so glad that we chose to touch on this subject. And I'm thinking about one of the women I've been watching. And I think it's because she's also in her early 40s like me. So, there's something about benchmarking yourself with somebody of your same age range.
Right.
But I think even if I was 20 or 90, I'd find her wonderful.
Yeah.
Tracy Ellis Ross. Ellis Ross?
Ellis Ross.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She is amazing.
Ooh, I can say 100 things about her, but recently she's really coming into my feed a lot. I feel like, hi Tracy, if you're watching, I'd love to meet you. But one of these things she has touched on recently is this notion of, well, let me take a step back. She hasn't touched on it. She just exudes somebody who is living in her light.
Yeah.
And she happens
in
to be
the
not married.
moment.
And she does 100 things, on TV and in music. She's just announced, etc., in fashion.
Yes.
And she's just herself. And she is extraordinarily brilliant.
Yeah.
While being this feminine diva of a woman and, again, not married. And so I just love to watch her and just think that, wow, wouldn't it have been a bummer if somebody had told her that she had to do it? Because perhaps that natural those natural wow qualities of hers would never have been given the opportunity to rise to the top.
Exactly.
So watching Tracy Ellis Ross, love her to bits.
And she was great. There was a video she did with Oprah recently.
Oh, yes.
Which was really brilliant.
Yes.
So, guys, check it out. I got lots of inspiration from that.
Same. I mean, and she talks about being in the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and I think we find ourselves either procrastinating or just kind of trying to, create a thing in our mind and, try and make sure that everything is perfect just so that we don't fail. And no, be in that moment and enjoy the moment. And we have a saying in my language, actually, which says that mangoes on a tree never get ripe at the same time.
I love it.
That's
so
powerful.
True.
That's
that
profound.
So true.
So never compare yourself to anybody.
Yeah. Mangoes,
so
repeat
great.
it.
Mangoes on the tree never get ripe at the same time.
I love it.
It's so true. And it's funny because you say that. There's another mango up in the garden. It's just on the tree comes on the rooftop there. And I'm telling you, it's the only ripe mango. But I promise. I was watching it yesterday because the monkeys that come and I thought they'd beat me to it and snap, and get the mango. And there are all these other mangoes. They're green and they're raw. They're probably crunchy. But this is the only one juicy mango. It's ready. It's ready for its life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. So I love that.
Yeah. So on that mango,
Yes.
Be a mango,
I love
ripen at your own time,
Indeed.
whenever you're ready, and be gentle on yourself. Failure is not necessarily failure. Failure actually is about a learning. It's more about focusing on what did you learn from
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's feel free to just live
Absolutely.
in our way with those learnings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Learn away.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also now on Facebook. So, facebook.com/We3Queens of Africa. And subscribe, guys. Take care.
Ta-da!
Ciao.